The common name of my class is Cave Paintings to Cathedrals. I've listed here the learning outcomes I put on the syllabus every year. This presentation is more about structure and questions that I have rather than content, so only a few of these outcomes will come up again. But in a nutshell, what I'm talking about is human-made monuments and their historical significance. I wanted to see where my course outcomes overlap with new pathways outcomes. Some of them are pretty obvious, those are the ones on the left. What I want to talk about today is a less obvious one, ethical reasoning. I mention ethics pretty frequently in my class, but it's usually a throwaway remark or a question. As a pathways course, I want to make it more intentional and a more active part. I sat down with the ethical reasoning section of the pathways plan. I decided my class was not the appropriate place to explain significant ethical theories, so I'm focusing on number 2 and 3, identifying ethical issues and applying specific ethical perspectives to an issue. Pause. Out of my 7 course goals, I've highlighted here the ones where a discussion of ethics could overlap with and enhance what I'm trying to do. This class is not the place where students get that foundations in ethics, but rather a place to explore how, when, and where ethical issues come into my discipline of art history, particularly the study of the monuments of the ancient world. My question then becomes, how do I adjust what has traditionally happened in the art history classroom, including my own, to make room for meaningful discussions about ethical reasoning without sacrificing content? And I'll admit that this is kind of an ongoing struggle, and I think probably many of you guys are maybe in the same situation. Students often see intro art history as memorizing names and dates, but incorporating ethical reasoning can be an opportunity to expand how they think about the material overall. So here are highlighted the learning indicators I want to focus on that I mentioned earlier, and in the next few slides, I've matched these indicators with my course goals using case studies. And this is where it gets easy and fun. I see the news as low-hanging fruit for appropriate case studies. This article, for example, raises the question, should we spend money, in this case $59 million, recreating damaged cultural objects when there are so many other problems in the world? Or in this case, why are cultural objects such valuable psychological weapons in military operations, and what role do these objects play in national and cultural identity? 70 years after World War II, the legality of the movement of cultural property during that time is still being debated on European stages. In the third learning indicator, we apply specific ethical perspectives. In this case, I might use a very current and sad example of the destruction of ancient sites by ISIS. Is this a global responsibility or a local one? How should we prioritize our goals in protecting Syrian heritage? Why should we care? Here I can also introduce some ethical principles. The ethical principles listed here might contradict each other when applied to this situation. I might ask students to discuss how they weigh the relative value of each principle. Is autonomy more important than the beneficence? Things like that could be a kind of a starting point for discussion. The activity in Syria has in fact led to conversations about the value of protecting cultural heritage. A recent op-ed suggests we can't save everything, and speaking out against it adds fuel to the flames. In fact, they bomb more when they destroy more. So we should get over it and get used to learning from replicas. It's also possible to bridge the ancient and the contemporary in more direct ways. We can discuss the costs and benefits of humiliating defeated leaders through their monuments, something that's been happening for thousands of years. Examples like this, I think, can bring art history out of that distant esoteric realm and into something that resonates with current events. The question then becomes, given how the typical art history class is taught, how do these conversations happen in an accessible and accessible manner? Where can we find the time and the space for these kinds of discussions? And I have to say, when I have these discussions, the students really, really like them a lot. Here's a typical example of an assessment question from my large survey class. Basically, memorize some facts and you'll do okay. I could generate some questions that would include what they've learned about ethical reasoning, but I really don't think that that would be the best fit. Instead, I'm really looking for a place where they can kind of hash out and hammer out these discussions as groups or small groups. Ideally, I think the best way for students to engage with this is through low-stakes online discussion forums with in-class follow-up. I admit that I'm still working on the details of this. I want it to be low stakes because I want it to a certain extent be exploratory for them, and I want it to be kind of a comfortable space where they can kind of be comfortable saying anything. I've used online forums before with very limited success. Students post and there's rarely any engagement. When I read a forum thread, I feel like I'm overhearing a conversation where everyone is talking and no one is listening. Good ideas are lost because students don't read each other's posts unless you are very heavy-handed about you have to reply to X number of posts. Right now I'm teaching this class online to about 25 students, and I'm trying a new platform called Mobius Slip. I'm not advertising for this platform, and I have to say I find their interface and analytics mind-numbing and overwhelming. Here's a screenshot of a bunch of numbers they've generated about my students that I really don't understand. But after grading the first assignment on Tuesday, I was very pleased by the quality of discussions around the posted topics. The format is 3-tier: post, peer review, self-reflection, and students are reading and writing much more carefully and constructively than I've ever seen in a forum discussion, and it can be scaled up for a large class. So this is where I'm at right now, and these are my subjective thoughts about integrating ethical reasoning and what I'm hoping I can work into my large class. The bottom line is, with a little work, I see it as enhancing my course goals, not competing with them, and I think that this is important. I mean, this is kind of ideal. I'm a Mediterranean archaeologist, and we are legally required to end every archaeology talk with a Mediterranean sunset and or an adult beverage. So here you go. Thank you.